Good evening, race fans. Welcome here to the Iowa Speedway for tonight's MPEC Napa Auto Parts 150. My name's Robert Hill Jr. Joining me up here in the booth, as always, is the Wrecking Ball, Chris Wright. Chris, how you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm doing pretty good. Ready to see some exciting action here tonight from Iowa Speedway. Should be a great race.
Absolutely should be. As you can see, the temperature here tonight on the chilly side, 76 degrees is the track temp. That is also the ambient temperature. So to me, Chris, that indicates that it is pretty darn chilly out there. Not necessarily a ton of grip on the colder side with the racetrack, but we'll see how that develops as the race goes on. Also, a little bit of wind, 6 kilometers an hour, which is up from what we usually see of about 2. Looking at the race format as well, 150 laps, 75 will be the halfway point, so 75 come to 76, and we will have 4 sets of Goodyear tires. Chris, let's take a look at the starting grid here tonight. Ethan Stanley, Tyler Fody on the front row. I'm going to point out the colors here as we get going. Those with the yellow background, so you see there with Fody and Stanley, are currently in playoff positions. David Tooker is the only locked-in driver. Of course, he won last week at Road America. And then Michael Hosick there with the blue background indicates that he is was it Watkins? It was Watkins Glen last week. Never mind. And Hosick with the blue background indicates that he is a playoff driver that is currently on the outside looking in. But it's Ethan Stanley, Tyler Fody on the front row, Tommy Ryan, and Chase Cabry in row number 2. Cabry, of course, does have some pro experience here, so we'll see how that comes into play tonight. David Tooker and Chad Frankenfield make up row number 3. Ethan Burrell, Michael Hosick in row 4. Tate Lytle and Johnny Thomas round out the top 10. Chris, take us through to position number 20, my friend.
Yeah, right there, just outside the top 10. Jeff Green there in 11th. Gavin Higgins, we'll share that row with him. We got Ty McIntosh. Leighton Norgard there, starting 13th and 14th. We got Scott Crump just inside the top 15, a little bit further back than I think he wanted to be tonight. Seth Rawls, Matthew Weeks, Jesse Racimas, Nick Massey, and Dustin Dewar will round out the top 20.
Starting 21st tonight, Jay Connor alongside Gerald Campbell. Jess Story and Jaden Racimas make up row number 12. Row 13 tonight, Tyler Popp and Jeff Ryan. Row 14, Andrew McCall and Dave Carpenter, with Kyle Hanshaw, Mark Rebilas, and Rory Collins rounding out the 31-car field as we work our way around the racing circuit. I don't believe we're going to go green this time, Chris. I believe we'll do 2 laps here at the Iowa Speedway. Yes, we will. So we'll work our way around once again. That's a mouthful right there for some reason.
We can go around. That's fine.
We'll go around. Tonight's race is brought to you by the folks at MPEC Napa Auto Parts, a family-owned business celebrating its 95th year in operation, having 16 stores in both northern Indiana and southwest Michigan. We appreciate them being on board with us here tonight. Chris, usually we get to race picks. I know you're going to go ahead and say Nick Massey, so I'm not even going to throw it to you at first. My pick to get it done here tonight, this actually hurts me to say this. I'm going to go with the 15 of Chad Frankenfield to get it done tonight. I just think he's due, but I'm going to let you take a dark horse pick that's not Nick or Chad here real quick.
Well, all right. If I'm getting a dark horse, I'm going to pick somebody who's really good at these type of racetracks, really good at the high tire fall-off places. I'm going to say Tate Lytle. That's who I'll say tonight.
Solid pick there with Tate Lytle. I'm going to go a little bit further back here in the field, and we'll go with Johnny Thomas to get it done here as we get set, and we are green now. Ethan Stanley leading the way. Jeff Ryan and Tyler Fody going to be side by side for position number 2 here, Chris, as they work their way down the back straightaway.
Yeah, down the back straightaway. Big checkup in the back of the field by the 9 machine. Checked up, got taken a couple 3 wide maneuvers there. Looks like these guys are really struggling on the bottom. Scott Crump getting shuffled here to the middle. between Matthew Weeks and Dustin Dewar back here in the field. Wow, it looks like a pack race back there around Scott Crump, Nick Massey, and the 00 machine.
Yeah, looking a little bit further back, it's 3x3, which is not something that we normally say at the short tracks, such as this
Ethan Burrell in the
Iowa
wall.
Speedway. As you mentioned, Ethan Burrell getting a piece of the outside wall. That's something that's going to come into play throughout the day here today, Chris. You know it, I know it. There's going to be a lot of pushing up towards that outside wall as the day develops. We'll see how these drivers are able to handle it, though. Unfortunately for Burrell, going to lose a couple of spots, but if there's ever a time to lose spots, it's right at the start of the race, because you still have a lot of opportunity to battle back and work your way up towards the front. But up front, though, it's Ethan Stanley pulling away now from Tommy Ryan, Tyler Fode, Chase Cabery, and David Tooker up there inside the top 5. Of course, David Tooker, last week's winner, coming off of a great performance there, looking to go back-to-back to kick off these playoffs. We'll see if he's able to get it done here tonight. Of course, this is race number 2 of the round of 14 here in the Rebilas Photography Grand National Series playoffs, Chris. So still Talladega to come next week. That is an absolute game changer. We'll see how that one goes. Of course, anybody has an opportunity to win when we head to those play tracks.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tooker getting the win. That's big to win the first race in the round, kind of take the rest of the round, take it easy, and he knows, he can just go out here and race tonight, and if the opportunity presents itself to get a little bit off strategy, and it has a chance to pan out. But I want to talk about Ethan Stanley for a second as well. Ethan Stanley, this is not a surprise to me seeing him drive away here on the short run. That's a guy that we typically see very strong.
He's actually catching lap traffic here, Chris.
Yeah, he's so strong on a short run, but normally he wears his stuff out. And so tonight, a lot of guys were telling me, with the track being as cool as it is, there's a lot of grip out here. Cars are really tight. So these guys are really going to get tight the longer we go. And I look for that 92 machine to start backing up maybe around lap 20, 25, if it takes that long. Because with all this grip, they're going to be able to really drive hard through the middle of the corner on fresh tires.
We're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on, first off, how the track develops as this race goes on, but also how these drivers work their way around when the conditions do change. We'll also keep you updated, of course, on the track temperatures. Tyler Popp gets a little piece of the outside wall. Just a quick note on some of the playoff drivers. The lowest running playoff driver right now is Nick Massey, which, unfortunately, Chris, of course, we absolutely love Nick Massey around here. Is your teammate? Well, it drives for the team that you're part of in the Cup Series. As, of course, you're suspended now.
Yeah, he's still my teammate.
He is still your teammate. Absolutely. You are. You're still at the shop. You're still getting coffee for the boys. He's had a miserable last bit of the season here in the Rebilas Photography Grand National Series. Kind of just squeaked his way in, but has not had a great start to the playoffs so far. We'll see if he's able to rebound today, work his way up towards the front. I'd say top 10 to 15 is a good day in points. So we'll see what Nick can do as the day goes on. Of course, you touched base on this one earlier. Ethan Burrell got a piece of the outside wall. Looks like the right side is a-okay, so shouldn't be too much of an issue for him. He currently resides there in the 12th position, kind of mid-pack in that playoff field. He's got Michael Hossack, one of those playoff guys, 2 cars ahead of him as he's side-by-side with the 12 of a Leighton Norgard. Actually did want to just point
and you brought
out.
up Nick there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I talked to him this week, and he said this first round does not set up well for me. That's what he was telling. He said I go to a road course. We're not very good on road courses. In these stock cars, he really isn't one of those guys that's super good. Iowa's not been a super strong track for him, but I think he's of the belief if he can get through this first round, they'll be able to do something for the rest of the playoffs. But he's just got to try to survive this round, and he did a great job surviving last week at the Glen. He just survived, hung around, got a decent finish, not terrible. So he didn't lose it last week like he could have. And then you talked about some of these other guys like Ethan Burrell, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to talk about Matthew Weeks too as a guy that is going to probably be a factor in this race here at the end of tonight. I think they're just saving their stuff right now. They're very smart. They're Both those guys know how to save their tires and have something left to race with on a longer run. So I look for them to be moving through this field. Maybe in the next 5 or 6 laps, we're going to see that switch flip, and those are going to be the guys that start moving forward.
I definitely do agree with you on that, Chris. As we're taking a look at Matthew Weeks, he's in a little bit of a gaggle here just ahead of Dustin Dewar, Jess Story, and Jesse Racimus. That are currently battling their way just outside of that top 15. Jay Connor right there as well. I want to touch on a driver that's inside the top 10, Chris, that if you look at the top 10 right now, you're probably noticing this driver as well that doesn't normally find himself up in these positions, but having himself a really solid day, up 5 spots so far. I'm talking about the 20 car Gavin Higgins. I'm really impressed with his opening stint here today. 16 laps in, currently resides in that 7th spot. Was going door to door with Jeff Green not too long ago. Now looks like he's about to go bumper to bumper with Jeff Green, but a great run here at the start of this one for Gavin Higgins. Always love seeing the underdogs performing beyond expectations.
And that's a guy that we've seen get a little better and a little better and a little better. We get to
Absolutely.
broadcast these races, and we get to race a couple times with these guys, and you can tell, the guys that are getting better, the guys that are figuring it out. And, I think we talked about Tyler Pott a lot this season as a guy that's gotten really, really good, especially at like the mile and a halves, battling for wins at a few of those mile and a halves. Not doing great tonight. Didn't get the qualifying run he wanted. Still running outside the top 20, but that's a playoff guy who is trying to climb from the back part of the field.
If he takes it easy, though, Chris, at this portion of the race, he could put himself in a really good position. Saved your set of tires. Eventually, we're going to get into a couple cautions here at Iowa. It always seems to happen that way. If you have an extra set towards the end, you might be able to make it work, but you got to stay off the wall, which unfortunately Tyler Pop did just have a little kiss with that outside barrier here at the Iowa Speedway. But we'll keep our eyes peeled to see how his race develops. He is just a couple of cars ahead of a couple more playoff drivers as things get a little dicey there with Jay Connor and Jess Story. But Gerald Campbell, Scott Crump, and Nick Massey, the lower 3 playoff drivers in the field right now. Of course, Gerald and Nick on the outside looking in right now alongside Tyler Pop and Michael Hosick. But Hosick having himself a solid run as well, currently up there in the 11th position, finds himself between David Tooker and Ethan Burrell. So in a very solid spot at this point in time. And, of course, we're going to keep our eyes peeled on the playoff drivers, but we have a bunch of solid non-playoff guys here today as well. Tommy Ryan's really cutting into that lead of Ethan Stanley over the last handful of laps. Cut about a half of a second off of that gap that Ethan had developed over the rest of the field. That continues to shrink now. I think Ethan Stanley might have just got a piece of the wall because he lost a ton of time right there, but we'll keep our eyes on that. But as I was saying, Tommy Ryan up here in 2nd, Jeff Green there in 6th. Of course, we mentioned Gavin Higgins, Johnny Thomas right there, a Leighton Norgard up in the top 10 as well. Of course, you can never count out this guy just outside the top 10, and Tate Lytle, who currently sits there in 13th. And hey, 2 cars behind him, I want to give a shout out to this guy. It is Ty McIntosh, driver of the number 75 machine, far hauler dirt on this side of that one. Picked up his first elite victory last night at the Talladega Superspeedway in the Stay Tuned Sports Truck Series. So shout out to him and Shift Esports.
Well, I want to bring home a couple points you just made. One of them, Ethan Stanley. No surprise to us. We talked about this just a little bit ago. It's that point in the run where I think Ethan has cooked his right front. He's probably pushing really bad, and now he's just going to give up a bunch of this lead. What you're banking on there is a caution every 25 or 30 laps when you're, taking that approach. And then I talked to 2 guys pre-race, one being Scott Crump, one being Johnny Thomas. And right now they are different ends of the spectrum. Scott, when I talked to him, they were thinking he was going to have a shot to win. Really thought they were going to be one of the guys that you had to beat tonight. And like you mentioned, he's not even running inside the top 20 right now. And I talked to Johnny, and Johnny said, we run in the top 15 tonight. We'll take that and move along. Well, and Johnny's overachieving, running up there in 8th place right now. So 2 guys who kind of missed the mark on where they thought they would be, or at least, the first 25 laps missed the mark on where they thought they would be. One's really happy about that, and the other one's pretty frustrated right now. And Scott Crump's in the wall hard over here in the middle of 3 and 4.
Wow.
Oh, he's way more frustrated now.
We're going to back this one up. It didn't trigger any sort of a time loop for us, but was that contact with Jess Story? Scott definitely drove it in really deep into the corner, Chris. If any sort of a tally were to be issued on that incident, personally, it would be on the 90, because he did hook himself off the nose of the 29. He doesn't want to hear that right now, of course, but that's just so unfortunate for Scott Crump. He's broken. I think he might have a meatball flag. Chris, can you confirm that?
He does.
He broke that car. You can see the sparks flying out of it every so often. That's really unfortunate for him. And Matthew Weeks must have had a brief issue there as well, because he's just lost a couple of positions on the racetrack, falling back to 15th. So we'll keep our eyes on that. That, of course, another playoff driver looking for a really solid run here today. And Chris, of course, this is race 2 of 3 of the round of 14. Whoa, Jay Connor hard into the wall just behind Matthew Weeks right there. But this is basically, in my opinion, this is the race that you have to get it done. You have to put yourself in a position to advance in the playoffs today. Otherwise, next week, it's really all out of your hands, and you're letting the rest of the field decide, do you make it or do you not?
Yeah, you do not want to go into Talladega having to depend on Talladega. That's not... It's not anything like that.
The biggest heartbreaker of Talladega is you could be leading coming off of turn 4, but with the start finish line being so far away, it's so easy for you to get just feet away and be leading, and then all of a sudden you're going to finish 15th. It's just so unfortunate with Talladega. It's the way that it plays out, and like we said, you got to lock it down tonight. Tonight has to be the night that you put yourself in position to advance in the playoffs for Scott Crump. Now it's going to be tough, but for his benefit, Lake Norman is one of the better teams when it comes to speedway racing. Josh Robin, a perennial winner when it comes to those speedways. Tyler Fode, of course, multi-time Daytona 500 champion as well. So maybe they put a couple extra eggs in the basket of Scott Crump next week, but you know teams like Pro Edge Racing and company are going to do whatever they can to make sure that Scott Crump doesn't get that win, and they get it themselves to lock their cars into the next round without really having to rely on points, because that's scary.
Yeah, you don't want to go into Talladega having to lean on Talladega. If you're going in depending on Talladega, and depending on when, now it's one thing to go in and depend on a top 15. You could probably get a top 15.
Oh, for sure. You can play your cards right for that.
But Scott's in a hole now. You know, I don't know what he did last week, but I don't think it was stellar. And now he's going to be, you know, pretty much out of this race at this point. So Scott's going in depending on Talladega, depending on probably needing to run top 3, if not win the thing. And that's going to be a tough situation going into next week. And as race control, you mentioned the tally for that issue. No, I'm not going to give a tally out for that. Race control is not going to touch that. The 90 went way up the track. 29 came down just a little bit, but, you know, the 29 didn't get any significant damage there. The 90 did, so we're not going to touch that incident or give a tally out for that incident.
I definitely agree with that, Chris. I think that's the right way to rule it. But just a quick note, Scott Crump was 9 points to the good coming into tonight. The bubble driver in those playoffs, Chris, as we ride on board with Tommy Ryan. He's quickly approaching Ethan Stanley, by the way. I'll just give you a quick run through from the top of the drivers that are currently in. Obviously, David Tooker locked in via his victory last week at Watkins Glen. Chase Cabry, 38 points to the good. So if he has a good day today, chances are he should be locked in going into Talladega. Ethan Stanley was 28 points to the good. Tyler Fode, 27. Then there's a bit of a drop off there to Matthew Weeks with 16 points to the good. Ethan Burrell, 13. Scott Crump, 9. Chad Frankenfield, 7. He's having a good day right now. This is going to play in his cards. And Seth Rawls, just 4 points to the good, ahead of Gerald Campbell, who of course is 4 points back. He is tied with Nick Massey at that 4-point buffer. Tyler Popp, 5 points back, so very close on the bubble. And then Michael Hosek, 13 points behind those guys that currently hold the buffer zone. as we're going to jump back out here. We're about to have a battle for the race lead. A 3-car dance for the race lead here, Chris. Tyler Fody has arrived on scene, as well as Tommy Ryan going to take a look down to the inside of the Ethan Stanley machine. We'll see if we're able to get a change for the lead here. Of course, Stanley's still going to have the upper lane, but Tommy Ryan going to clear, move the 66 out front, as Fody going to look to take that second spot as well.
So what would you call that? About 35 laps? That's what I would say. 35 laps if you drove it as hard as you could, didn't save nothing. You know, so that's a number that I would have in my mind later in the race. On if
I feel like 30. I think 30 is about the plateau. 30, 32. And then it really started to drop off there. We saw that with Ethan Stanley losing a bunch of spots, and unfortunately for him, now he's going to fall back into that sucker hole and likely get caught by Chase Cabery as well. We'll see how this one advances. Doesn't look like we've got Scott Crump in the infield care center, so they are still working on getting that car repaired, I do believe, for him to potentially continue on in this event. So the top 3, Tommy Ryan, Tyler Fody, Ethan Stanley, as it looks like Gerald Campbell in a bit of a battle here with Jesse Racimus. Racimus right up against that outside wall. That, of course, is Nicholas Massey just behind them, the driver of the number 48 machine, currently sitting there in 21st, trying to get into the top 20 for just the second time tonight. Of course, started in that 19th spot and immediately put the parachute out and fell back in the field. Chad looks like he's in a bit of a battle as well here, Chris. Jeff Green and Gavin Higgins catching up to him. Kudos to Gavin, man. He's having himself a really good run right now. Has held on to those tires very, very well, and is now up there with Jeff Green once again and Chad Frankenfield. So no real drop as of yet for those guys. They're all maintaining the same sort of pace that they had together earlier on. But speaking of drop, Ethan Stanley already lost a second, now only about 4/10 up the road from Chase Cabery, who's working his way forward. And Chase will be one of the first guys to tell you that he has struggled here at Iowa in the past, especially in the real world. He said he would absolutely cook his tires here, Chris. So we'll see how that develops as the day goes on. Of course, the home of many, many cornfields here in Iowa. We do have a corn video. I'm not going to play it because it was a little weird in the ARCA race, but we'll continue on.
And right now we're looking at Ethan Stanley here on the screen. Right now what he's got to do is not make his night worse. I know that the car is not handling good. We can all clearly see that. The speed is going from that machine. He is very tight right now. You do not want to hit the wall.
Can I interrupt you for just 1 second? What's the fuel window for these guys? How close are we to pit stops?
They can still run another 50 laps or so on fuel.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Ethan is not even likely thinking of a pit stop as of yet.
Well, you'd like to probably, if it runs green, split the race in half. So you'd like to see,
get to that
probably
75
not trying to pit
point
for 20 laps, 25 laps.
Well, if you're going to half, you're still 30 away, which eventually, as you know, Chris, of course, the tires start to take a change. As the race goes on, you're going to get to the point where it goes from really tight to snappy loose as the race goes on. And I just want to quickly take a look at the temperatures. It has not gone up whatsoever. So
Weeks gets into the back of set there a little bit, down into 3.
So I believe static weather is being employed here tonight. But yeah, you're seeing it right there. Is Weeks a little bit mad right here with Seth Rawls?
I'm not sure.
I'm seeing some aggression between those guys, and that's kind of uncommon between Matthew Weeks and Seth Rawls, but we'll keep our eyes on this one. Because you mentioned the contact, then we jump back, and there was more contact between those drivers. Also of note, Scott Crump's still on pit lane. Has he exited the server, Chris?
He has not, but I'm about to have to address it, I think.
Well, he's able to stay and run as many laps as he absolutely wants, so no big deal. Oh, contact between Weeks and Rawls is into the wall. Weeks just ran Rawls up into the outside wall right there. What in the world? taking a look at the 11 of Weeks and the 25 of Rawls. I got to see this again, but to me, it looks like the 11 just pushes up into the 25. 25 comes down at the start. I'm gonna let you decide on this one, Chris, because there was definitely some anger in this one.
Yeah, lots of anger in this one.
I think Rawls does come down, but then it just continues on, and I kind of feel like if we go on board with the 25, we might see the steering wheel turn to the left. And we're gonna do that. Oh, that's the wrong driver. There we go. Ooh. He's turning that wheel even more right there. Yeah, there was some malice in that one, I do believe, but we'll let race control take care of that because that's not something that seems too fun to deal with right now. We do see a battle brewing for the lead once again, though. Tommy Ryan and Tyler Fody. Oh, that was close as Fody just squeezes by Mr. Rory Collins. Chris, we had a chance to see Rory out in a modified the other day, and he did a great job. I think Chris is busy doing his race control duties right now. Dave Carpenter down on pit lane, the number 71 machine. Dusty Dewar, he had himself a couple of issues. I believe he's been down pit road already. And just of note, folks, there he is back on the racetrack. Scott Crump has returned to the field. We'll see if anything comes from the earlier contact. Of course, these guys have to remember they're playoff drivers, so there's some higher standards and definitely some penalties could come into play if there's any sort of intent involved in any incident that we see here tonight. Of course, already losing a playoff driver for a behavioral procedure that was not followed last week at Watkins Glen. That's as far as we're going to go into that.
Yeah, I hope not. I think Scott's just out here collecting points.
Chris, was there any sort of ruling issued on the incident between the 25 and the 11?
Just a racing deal. I think he thought the 11 was going to run the bottom. The 11 kind of ran the middle, so the 25 just turned in, and then they got hung together. You know, with the sim, the contact. Sometimes it registers as a hang up, and it hung them up, and it drove the 25 into the wall. So I'm not going to call a tally on that.
Yeah, my only issue from what I saw on that one was when we went on board with the 25 and it looked like the wheel was getting cranked even more to the left as he was on the right rear of the 11 car. But of course, sometimes iRacing's replays do not necessarily correlate with what is actually going on.
I have no doubt he was turning left, but when the way they hung together, I think most guys are going to keep turning left because it's trying to drive that car straight into the wall. Like it's some kind of weird thing that happens when iRacing from time to time where when you get hung together. So his car is trying to drive straight. He's trying not to drive it straight into the wall. And you've seen that even him turning left, it wasn't turning the 11. It was the way the hang up happened. It still pushed him straight out into the fence. It's almost like a netcode type situation where the sim doesn't quite handle that contact the way it should.
Johnny Thomas to pit lane. It's one of the early stops of some of these drivers. Of course, we've seen Carpenter and Dewar both down pit lane as well, but the Belly Up Sports 91 machine going to come to the attention of his pit crew. Dave Carpenter still down there on pit lane. Not sure what's going on with him. Tommy Ryan does continue to lead. They're going to catch up some additional lap traffic here. I believe that to be Kyle Hanshaw right ahead of them. Yes, it is the driver of the number 46 machine, Kyle Hanshaw. And the 35 of Jeff Ryan just up the road as well. I would say when they catch these lap cars.
What's Dusty doing?
Ooh.
Dusty was driving down the front. Is he trying to shorten the track?
Maybe. maybe Dustin Doer trying to do something a little bit different. Seth Rawls going to come to pit lane here, Chris. Some damage on that machine, of course, from the earlier incident. Hopefully, for his sake, he's able to get it repaired. But one thing that I was mentioning, Tommy Ryan leads the race. Jeff Ryan is the next lap car up the road. I'd expect him probably to get out of the way rather quickly, maybe even come into play as a pick if possible here, but I think it's still too early for gamesmanship like that, but you never know. Andrew McCall also coming down. Oh, he was sideways. The Apollo Motorsports number 84 trying to launch itself sideways on the entry of pit lane. We are quickly approaching the halfway point. That, of course, going to be at the end of lap 75, coming to 76. Norgard coming down, like you mentioned, Chris. Great catch right there as he works his way to the pit lane. Chris, Iowa's an interesting racetrack. There's some real quirks to it. If you get up too high, especially between turns 1 and 2, there's some major bumps up there that can absolutely unsettle the race car or even make it so the steering is absolutely uncontrollable, as a little bit earlier than anticipated, I think, for Ethan. So not going to be splitting this one in half for Ethan Stanley. By the way, folks, still at this point, green to the end of lap 64 now as we work our way to 65. So great opening run by these drivers. Even if we did get a caution in the next few, it would be an absolutely phenomenal opening stint. But we'll see how this race develops. Of course, that's Johnny Thomas just behind with brand new tires, currently scored in the 27th position. Going to take to the inside, work his way up and past the race. Oh, not quite past. Now he's past Tommy Ryan. So potentially going to hold up the 66 for just a second there. But Tommy doing a very nice job here tonight. That 66 has been steady for all the races that he's been in this season. Been up and around the top 10. Unfortunately, didn't run all of the races, I don't believe, Chris. So I think that's the reason that he was not in the playoffs. Otherwise, quite possibly would have been one of those playoff drivers. And for his sake, if he was, I think he'd be putting himself in a pretty good position tonight.
Yeah, some of these guys just didn't make enough starts or couldn't, everybody's got real lives and got stuff going on and whatnot. So it's just one of those things, but it's still fun to, even if you're not in the playoffs with that, when you show up, you're one of the fastest guys. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So looking at Tommy's stats, he's a pretty good qualifier, qualified inside the top 10 a handful of times, in the top 3 spots 3 times already this season. Actually make that 4 with tonight's race, but hasn't actually gotten to top 5, which is a little bit surprising to me, with only 2 top 10s, and the rest of the finish is not overly fantastic. Ran into a lot of trouble this season, but has run really well. So this could be a big momentum builder for Tommy Ryan looking ahead to next season. I know he's going to be back. He's going to be looking for more, and he's going to be one of those guys that we could see up there contending for a playoff spot, and maybe even being one of those guys that works his way into the playoffs and into contention for the championship at the end of the season. But still a long way to go until then, of course. But great battle up front here. Tyler Popp going to pop his way down to pit lane here, Chris, as Michael Hossack and Gavin Higgins going to go side by side for the 9th spot on the racetrack. That's Higgins up top, Hossack on the bottom. Here comes Jake Connor as well.
Yeah, lots of pit stops happening. Some of these, we're to that point now where these guys are splitting it right in half. So we'll see what happens. Some of these guys, like Ethan Stanley, they've been out here a while. They're going to have a pretty good gap for a little while.
There's
if
just
somebody
Story
wanted
to
to, they
pit
could
lane.
still run about 20 more laps. They can run to about lap 90, 93 in that neighborhood.
I think the trigger point here, Chris, for some of these guys, especially Tommy Ryan and Tyler Fode, could very well be that end of lap 75 into 76 point, where the extra point is up for grabs here tonight by leading at halfway. Of course, for a guy like Tyler Fode, I think it carries more weight than it does to Tommy at this point in the season, but race car drivers always want to be the guy to steal that bonus point, be up there and put themselves in a good position to win. So watch for Tyler Fode maybe to step it up just a little bit here in the next 2 to 3 laps and try to take that top spot away from Tommy and grab that extra playoff point. I believe there's some more shuffling up here in the top 10. Looks like Tate and Chad gonna go side by side. Frankenfield up top. Tate Lytle down on the inside. Lytle looking to work his way into that 4th spot. Started back in 9th tonight, so slow but steady gains here for Tate Lytle.
Yeah, and he's trying to, we're on this long run now. One thing I'm surprised about, too, is Chase Cabre. He's not made his way to the front. He started up there. I'm going to tell you what, though, there is a big wad here around Gerald Campbell, Michael Hosick. They're all held
Tommy
up.
Ryan to pit road.
Pass.
Race leader comes down. He's going to give up that halfway point potentially to Tyler Fody. Of course, it does come at the end of this lap. Jeff Green also coming to pit road. So a couple of those top 10 guys working their way pit side as Fody going to come around and should be able to snag that playoff point this time. Of course, he has Andrew McCall and Tyler Pop right there with him. So playoff point, score it here, Chris. It's going to Tyler Fody at the end of lap 75 as McCall gets sideways on his inside. Michael Hosick to pit lane. Tommy Ryan, of course, we mentioned Jeff Green. Jeff Ryan also on pit lane. I would expect Fody and Chase to come down soon. Probably by lap 80, we should see the bulk of these guys down pit lane. But you never know here, Chris. Some of these guys might try to run it out a little bit longer. Rory Collins, here he is entering pit lane in the 62. Fody's staying high, so he's not thinking about pit lane as of yet.
Yeah, not yet. Chase is closing the gap here. Tate Lytle's a ways. Here comes Chad Frankenfield to pit road.
Chucky to pit road in the number 15, kicking the tires entry for Little Eagle Racing. Of course, that team gearing up for the Indy 500, or sorry, the Rebilas Photography Indianapolis 500 coming up on the 9th of May. This Thursday, Chris, Indy 500 qualifying here in the Elite Racing League. Coverage will be right here on the Elite Racing Network. Be sure to tune in for that. Always a dramatic couple of hours as they work to set the field and decide who's in and who's out.
Yeah, and that last hour is always super exciting. The one time I got to take part in it, it was super exciting. And a lot of guys, making another run at it. And do you pull your time? Do you not pull your time? It's tough. It's
really tough. Absolutely. And when you're trying to think of, should I pull my time? I'm kind of in the middle of the field, but track might cool off a little bit. Maybe guys are going to be able to set faster laps, and I don't want to be one of those guys that doesn't have the chance to set another lap. Mark Rebilas there to pit lane, and I've been on the side where I've been able to knock a real world competitor out of the race where Santino Ferrucci didn't make it a couple of seasons ago, and I was one of the reasons why, which is kind of funny, but just glad I was able to make it.
Yeah, and while we're on the talk of those open wheel machines and whatnot, I hope Dave had a great time. I know Dave.
Down at Barber.
Talked to Dave there before he went to Barber and got to see a great race. And
I heard he went up
one of those.
I heard he went up on the pedestrian bridge and knocked Georgina down from the bridge. I don't know if you saw that clip, Chris.
I did. I was going to say, I heard they had one of those wacky cautions.
Yeah, well, they stayed green for a little bit. Somebody actually clipped the mannequin that fell from the pedestrian bridge. Folks, if you haven't seen that yet, after this race, head over to YouTube and check it out. The mannequin that hangs from the pedestrian bridge at Barber ended up falling onto the racetrack, and I forget who it was. Somebody went by and clipped the wrist of the mannequin called Georgina, absolutely tore it off, which was quite hilarious. James Hinchcliffe was on the broadcast, and he had to step away. He was laughing so hard.
Yeah, it's just one of those moments, but it was a great race. Lots of different strategies played out, and of course, old RP and his car is the talk of the town over there right now. But right now, the talk of the town is pit stops. And when do you pit? When do you not? And right now, we still have Fody out here.
Connor's going to pit, as will Gavin Higgins.
We got a lot of guys running this long.
We'll keep our eyes peeled on this.
Change everything.
Well, let's hope we don't get one of those. This has been a great, very fast race so far for these drivers. Already coming up on lap 90 here shortly. So about 65 to go this time.
I gotta feel like it's Iowa. We're going to get a lot of these guys with fresh tires.
We should eventually get one, Chris. Not that we're hoping for one, because I love a green flag race where it goes green to checker, but yellow flags also throw a little bit of strategy in there, as you see Chase Cavery side by side with Gerald Campbell. Shout out to Chase, by the way, picked up a big win a couple weeks ago at Millbridge on Wednesday. Oh, Matthew Weeks just barely misses the barrels as he works his way down pit lane. Kyle Hanshaw coming down as well. Is this his second stop? No, this is his first. So unfortunately for Hanshaw, just not in a good position tonight. Here comes the rest of Pro Edge. Tate Lytle, David Tooker, Ethan Burrell, all coming down. So they're following the lead of Matthew Weeks. I don't know that I necessarily like the strategy of taking all of them down pit road at once, just due to the fact that if one of them messes up and hits the barrels, that could potentially take the entire team with it. But Pro Edge has won many races, many championships, so strategy is something that they definitely do excel at. As we see Tyler Fody venturing towards the bottom of the racetrack, maybe starting to think about a pit stop here, Chris, and no, he's going to still stay up on the high side. If he does pit now, we can call him Quinn Half for pitting from the high lane. But Ty McIntosh, Jesse Racimus going to come down pit lane. So the three drivers still on the racetrack: Tyler Fody, Chase Cavery, and Nick Massey. The top three, as I thought Massey was coming down there, slowed up just a little bit. Tyler Fody getting very close to the outside wall there, as Fody gonna drop down. Fody gonna take it to pit lane, as will Chase Cavery, and Nick Massey is working his way down the back straightaway. So he was quite a ways back from those leaders. We'll see if he stays out. No, he will come down pit lane. Nick Massey, no, he won't. Wow, okay. Massey just running a different line than that of the rest of the field by having those low cuts on exit, maybe just due to the wear on those tires at this point. But Nick Massey, your race leader now, Chris. If the race ended now, your pick would finally look good for you.
Well, I picked Tate tonight. I can't take two picks. You know, I picked Tate.
No, you took both. You took Nick and Tate because Tate was your underdog.
Oh, I didn't realize we were making two picks. I only made one pick. Okay.
No, you made two. I said I'm not going to let you say Nick again, even though that's your pick. So yeah, Nick Massey there, Tommy Ryan going to cycle to the lead eventually. We'll see how it pays off for him. We'll see what that gap is as well between Tommy and Tyler Fody. Right now looks like about 10 seconds between Tommy and Tyler. So we'll see how that pans out as Nick Massey letting these guys by. Of course, 90 lap difference. Not really much choice when it comes to Mr. Nicholas Massey. He's going to ride on the bottom, nearly hits Tyler Pop, and he's going to hit pit lane, comes down for his stop. And Chris, we're going to take our pit stop here, pay some bills. When we come back, we'll take you to the finish, or at least through the middle portion of the MPEC Napa Auto Parts 150 right here on the Elite Racing Network. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
The NASCAR Cup Series returns to Worldwide Technology Raceway on June 1st and 2nd, 2024. The time to get your tickets is now. For only $10 down, you can lock in your seats for an incredible weekend of family fun, featuring the Enjoy Illinois 300 and the Confluence Music Festival. Racing, music, camping, it all adds up to one amazing party. Go to www.raceway.com for the hottest ticket of the year.
And we are back here at Iowa Speedway. It's the MPEC Napa Auto Parts 150. Tonight's race, of course, as mentioned, brought to you by the folks at MPEC Napa Auto Parts, a family-owned business celebrating its 95th year in operation with 16 stores in northern Indiana and southwest Michigan. We thank them once again for their continued support of the Elite Racing League alongside Blue Egg Marketing, the marketing department for small businesses. And, of course, you just heard from the folks at Worldwide Technology Raceway. We thank them for their continued partnership as well. And of course, Rebilas Photography, RebilasPhoto.com for all your photography needs. Chris, is Tommy Ryan quickly coming up on the rear end there of Rory Collins. Ryan continues to lead the way by about 3 seconds over Ethan Stanley, and another second and a bit back is where we find Tyler Fody. He's got a second over Chase Cabry, and Chad sixth, Tate in fifth, as that pass, I believe, was just made. Chad currently sitting there in that sixth spot. Of course, Nick Massey, who employed the late strategy here to come down pit road. 50 laps to go, by the way. Nick Massey is now currently 22nd, so we'll see how this one pays off for him. He is 22 seconds behind the race leader, who last time by ran a 24.8. So Tommy Ryan, yeah, you can see it right there. Tommy Ryan quickly coming up on Nick Massey. So expect to see the 48 potentially a lap down here shortly, but there is a tire difference that's going to come into play here as well. So Massey might be okay, as we see, of course, Jesse Racines and Scott Crump right ahead of the race leader. Chris, I want to touch on this real quick as we are less than 50 to go. We're going to give an update on where the playoff drivers currently stand. Tyler Fody is in second. Ethan Stanley in the third spot. Chase Cabry in fourth. Of course, all of these drivers are currently in a spot to advance to the next round. Chad Frankenfield currently runs in sixth. David Tooker is locked into the next round, currently runs there in eighth. Ethan Burrell in 10th is a driver also entering tonight in a spot to advance. Gerald Campbell 11th. Michael Hosick in 12th, and it's Tyler Pott back in 15th, who is Matthew Weeks behind him. Seth Rawls in 20th with Nick Massey to his inside. These drivers both playoff drivers. And of course, Scott Crump with his early issues is a bunch of laps down in position number 30. So Talladega for Scott Crump going to be absolutely a big one. Most likely a win to advance situation for him.
Yeah, and right now we're seeing Tommy Ryan lead, but he was one of those guys that really short pitted. He's one of the slowest cars on the racetrack of, our guys that are running right now. I mean, you talked about Nick Massey and you talked about Jesse. Those guys past him are driving away on way fresher tires. Tyler Fody is going to be there here in just a handful of laps. Ethan Stanley is on the same strategy as Tommy. Both these guys are going to back up. If there's not a caution here in the next few laps, these guys are really going to backslide hard here, as everybody else ran a lot longer. A lot of guys ran up towards that halfway mark.
Well, Chris, here you go.
Past it.
On the screen, that is your stint length for the top 20 in the field. You can see how long Tommy Ryan has been out there. 32 laps so far, so almost double what Tyler Fody and Chase Cabry have been out on the field for. Of course, the longest stretch of the playoff guys is Ethan Stanley, who pit 1 lap after Leighton Norgard, who has been out there the longest And actually, I believe, no, the longest is Johnny Thomas, who pit almost 50 laps ago.
Yeah, and those guys are paying the price that short pitted. You know, Johnny's back to 19th. A lot of these guys that short pitted, I'm telling you right now, Nick Massey, we saw him be one of the last ones to pit. If this thing stays green, and the only reason I'm using Nick as a reference is because he's been running about 20th all race. Ethan Stanley's been running top 3 all race. If it stays green to the end, Nick is likely going to pass Ethan Stanley before the end of this race.
That's definitely going to be something to follow along. And just take a look at the track map here in the top right here screen. It just shows how the field is kind of separated a little bit. We have a couple of groups of cars out there rather than just everyone together. So that's something to keep in mind as we're going to have to navigate through lap traffic. Quickly approaching 40 to go. We're 41 right now. And you can see right there, Tyler Fode just entered the picture, getting closer to your race leader, Tommy Ryan, as we'll ride on board here with Tyler Fode. You can see that gap starting to shrink just a little bit.
Yeah, and Fode, you know, running long, did not lose near the laps on the front side of this run that we thought, you know, not or near the time. Those guys pitted 20, 25 laps before him, and it's, you know, I guess it has been about 20, 25 laps since Fode pitted, so it's about what we thought or about what we expected. It just feels like, I don't know, I feel like they did not maybe have a great out after those pit stops, and it's really hard when you're short pitting. You would think you're just going to be blazing fast, but you're catching groups of cars. You're catching guys running double wide, or some of them are 3 wide, and you kind of got to check up, and you can't really use those new tires that you got at certain points when you have them and nobody else does. So that's one of the reasons it's better to maybe pit a little bit later than on the short side of the run, because when you pit later, you're not catching them nearly as quick, and they're not nearly as slow compared to you on your brand new tires on the other side of the run.
Are you calling me slow?
I did not call you slow.
It's true. I am very slow out on the racetrack sometimes. As we look back from Tommy Ryan, just look how close Tyler Fode is getting to the rear end. We're going to have a battle here in just a second for the race lead. By the way, Seth Rawls
it's not going to be a battle.
Just came down. No, it's going to be a very quick pass, I do believe, by Tyler Fode, as of course there is about a 15 lap difference in tires. It's all going to depend how quickly Fode can get by Andrew Bacall here, who is currently up on the high side. Nah, it doesn't even look like it's going to come into play. Maybe even help Tyler Fode here. They're going to be side by side working through 3 and 4. Chris, this race has absolutely ticked off very fast here tonight. Great job by these drivers so far.
Yeah, and we're seeing it's not quite as easy as I thought it would be. So that tells me maybe Tommy did a great job taking care of his stuff there and didn't burn it up as he's trying to hold on to the spot. Matthew Weeks, one of those guys who pitted real late in the run too, and we're seeing him try to come through this traffic. And look at Fode. Fode cannot make this pass right now. He's going to have to figure something out.
Tommy's done a really nice job, I think, of saving the tires just a bit, but right there, sent it a little bit too high up the track. And Chris, every time I think that Tommy Ryan's going to give the top spot away, he just shocks me and is able to hold on to it. But Tyler Fode going to get all over the rear end of that machine. Maybe try to unsettle the rear end of the 66, give himself an opportunity to get by. Just of note, looks like we're having a pretty good battle back in 14th around Gavin Higgins, Matthew Weeks, and Michael Hossack. We'll touch it when we can, but no. Jess Story up top. This could come into play. This could come into play if Jess Story stays high and Tommy's able to get there, but no. Tyler Fode does move to the race lead, and we're going to move back quickly here to the battle around Michael Hossack, Gavin Higgins, Ty McIntosh, and Matthew Weeks. Nick Massey getting up into the shot as well. So a couple of playoff drivers back in this gaggle of cars. Of course, we're going to get stuck behind the building here, so we'll go with the drone cam. Drones don't usually get stuck behind buildings, just run into the side of them.
Yeah, there's a great group right here, and then there's a great group that Ethan Stanley is kind of backing up right now in front of, too, just out in front of these guys.
Oh, wow. David Tooker, Ethan Stanley, Seth Rawls, who is a lap or more down at this point, and Ethan Burrell is in there as well. These guys up inside the top 10. Stanley, of course, feeling the effects of the older tires at this point as well, as he was one of those early drivers to come
I'm gonna
down
tell you,
pit lane.
something that we should be concerned about with Johnny Thomas, Ethan Stanley, and I think Tommy saved his stuff pretty good. I don't think Tommy has burnt his stuff up, but these guys are going to have to go nearly a full fuel run because of how they pitted and how quick they pitted. We could be talking about Ethan Stanley maybe getting a flat tire here in the last 10 laps of this race, because he is really struggling right now with front turn and the fact that the car does not want to turn. So that's a whole nother situation that could come into play here is getting a flat later in this race.
That's definitely a good point, Chris, and something that very well could come into play here. We're seeing Ethan Stanley really putting a lot of pressure on that right front tire, trying to rotate through the corners at this point. Of course, Ethan, a very, very solid driver. He's showing a bit of aggression right now as well. I noticed last time, Chris, when Ethan Burrell was able to get by him, Ethan Stanley gave him the bumper just after, and it was much of the same right there with Chad Frankenfield. So Stanley being a little bit aggressive, maybe trying to force his way to a caution without necessarily doing anything too major.
Yeah, and if you're Ethan Stanley, you want a caution. You might race guys really close. Try not to give anything up. You know, you're not trying to wreck anybody, but you're like,
we got to go back to this one, Chris. Spot. This is still a gaggle of cars. This is a 5-car battle for position from 13th on back to Nick Massey, actually to Tyler McIntosh now, who currently holds on to that 17th position. It's probably the first time Ty's ever been called Tyler on a broadcast.
Yeah, and it's right here in this group. Weeks is on the little bit fresher tires, and so is Nick. And it's still just really hard to make these passes.
These guys aren't going to let them by. I mean, Michael Hossack's a playoff driver, so if he can gain some points there on Weeks or Massey, absolutely go for it.
Now, I do think there's enough laps left where it looks like they're running the bottom good enough that, you know, you're seeing it here with Weeks. Eventually, they're going to be able to make this pass, even if it's one car at a time. I mean, Weeks got pretty far up there right there. He's going to lose some ground back on the straightaway, but all it's going to take is him to be able to get in line one time, follow that 24 through a set of corners one time, and then pull back down on the 24.
25 to go here, Chris, in the MPEC Napa Auto Parts 150. One thing I want to point out here is we have this battle that's coming up on a group of lap cars, which is another positional battle that we've been following here amongst Rory Collins and Kyle Hanshaw. So this could get very interesting. We're also catching up to Gerald Campbell and Jeff Green, who is 10th and 11th on the racetrack. Jake Connor is up in the middle of that as well, so could get very, very close as Matthew Weeks all over the rear end of Gavin Higgins. Ty McIntosh and Nick Massey going to be side by side just behind them. So some great battles all throughout the field here. Up front, it is Tommy Ryan trying to chase down Tyler Fode as Fode took the lead a handful of laps ago, starting to spread his wings just a little bit here, about 0.6 of a second separating first and second. It's 3 seconds back to Chase Cabry, who has almost 2 seconds over Tate Lytle, who has David Tooker trying to catch him. A couple of seconds between those drivers as well, but no real gap between Tooker and Burrell. Burrell currently there in 6th. Then it's a 1.5 seconds back to Chad Frankenfield, who has another 1.5 seconds back to a Leighton Norgard, who's having a very solid day today. Ethan Stanley there in 9th. And something I always like to point out, the biggest mover of the day so far has been Gerald Campbell, who is up 12 spots on the day, currently running in that 10th position as he has a gaggle of race cars behind him.
Yeah, let's talk about Gerald for a second. We haven't talked about Gerald tonight, and he's had a solid night here. I think that's some new collars, too. Is that the same car he's been driving all season? I know he's had the same sponsor, but I think it's a little bit of a different car, right?
I think it's definitely a different car. Of course, the Monster Mutt 00 of Gerald Campbell.
Simply Racing, too, the podcast.
Yes, of course, the Simply Racing podcast. That's going to be... I believe on Thursday night they'll be back. Unfortunately, they did have a week off, but they've got a lot to talk about, Chris, right? from last week's racing festivities, and of course this week as well. A lot of great action. So going to be a busy show for the Simply Racing podcast crews. We're 20 laps to go. It's Tyler Fody, Tommy Ryan, Chase Cabry, Tate Lytle, and David Tooker. The top 5 as we're watching side by side for 14th right now. Matthew Weeks going to take a look to the inside. He's trying to get a 2-for-1 here as he takes a peek to the inside of Michael Hosick. Not quite able to get there. The inside lane not necessarily paying dividends for Matthew Weeks at this point, but he's doing whatever he possibly can to try to get up there and get that spot. We have another side-by-side battle, this one inside the top 10. Chris, it's Ethan Stanley up top, continuing to lose spots.
Matthew Weeks is probably getting pretty frustrated right now. So is Nick Massey. If I had to guess, I tell you, there's nothing more frustrating than catching a group of cars knowing you're faster, but they're all running right there in the line. And I feel like if they didn't have to pass more,
are you faster if you haven't been able to pass them?
Well, that's part of Iowa. It's so hard. This place has that progressive banking.
Yeah, but
so
I don't know. I think if you're quicker, you're still going to be able to make the move.
Oh man, you have to be 3/4 of a second faster than somebody to make the pass and make it with ease. Like, it's really hard to pass around here. And you see they got the 20 shucked to the bottom. And now he's backing up. He's going to slide right up in front of the gate.
I believe Matthew Weeks does have the pace to get by these guys. I just don't think Nick does. I don't think he's had a good car here tonight whatsoever. His strategy has put him up into 16th, but that's really the best he's been all night. He just has not had good pace. Hasn't been a real contender for even a top 15 this evening. So I think the 48 team has to go to the drawing board for Talladega because they've had a miserable start to the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's just part of these, these tires. Like you said, I think Weeks and Massey are both faster than these guys right now. But Weeks is going to be able to make this 24 pass now, I believe. I believe since he's going to be able to follow him to the corner, get a run, at some point he will be able to pass Michael. Now that he's not trying to do it from the third car in line. He's just trying to build a run right now off one of these corners to be able to do it and make sure he can do it with ease. Great run here off of 2.
Now,
not great like I thought it was.
There you go. Weeks looks like he's going to take the spot there over Hosick. Massey, of course, still stuck there behind Ty McIntosh, just a little bit further back. And I got to wonder how big of a difference there is in the playoff field when it comes to practice hours that have been put in for these opening 2 rounds. I'd expect Tyler Fody and Scott Crump to have done multiple hundreds of laps at both tracks so far. Of course, they are quote unquote
you just
sweaty
left that battle, but lap
when it
cars
comes
are
to
coming
this.
Play run at the top.
Yeah, this is getting close.
Yeah, and you see once they got the 24 off the top, he's really struggled. 3 wide with lappers.
He's been able to make it work.
Interesting.
He's been able to make it work. Looks like he's going to try to get back to the middle of the 35 and the 75. That, of course, being Jeff Ryan and Ty McIntosh.
Look at Ty. Send it down in there. He's going to try to slide up.
Yeah, Ty's done a good job. Hosick going to throw a little bit of maybe a block on Nick Massey. Not too sure what that was, but coming to 10 to go next time by Chris Wright. Can you believe that? Already 10 to go? Actually, it's 10 to go now.
I cannot
There's Tyler
believe
Fody. He's coming up on these guys.
I cannot believe we've been able to run this long without a caution.
Don't jinx it now. Hey, Massey looks like he made a pass, held up Hosick a little bit there, though, when he did make that move.
Do you remember what I said about Massey versus Stanley? Look right out in front of Massey.
Yeah, but even with the old tires of Ethan Stanley, it does look like he's running quicker than Nick Massey.
Oh, Stanley's backing up. And Matthew Weeks gets around Stanley.
Their times are definitely close, and I hate that the next race is Talladega, because I would have liked to see who can lock in based off of skill rather than luck. But I guess that is the joy of these playoffs, where you do have those super speedways just to change things up a little bit.
And there it is. Stanley's Stanley's going to be pretty frustrated here that this didn't pan out. He's really backed up hard. He's going to struggle to stay on the lead lap. I don't think he will stay on the lead lap. It's just old tires.
I have big doubts of him staying on the lead lap. Tyler Fode is only a handful of cars back from him. Fode's just coming off of turn number 2 now, as Ethan Stanley just working his way into turn number 3. So not a huge difference between those guys right now, as we're going to come around to 6 to go this time for Tyler Fode. Yeah, look, you can see it right there, Chris. There's Fode. There's Stanley. Barely even have to pan the camera to get from one to the other.
92 pushing up in the middle of the corner. That tire, he's hoping right now that he doesn't have to make a pit stop for the end of this thing, because if he has to pit because of a blown tire, he is going to drop.
My feelings are that he's gotten the tire warning, absolutely, and he's probably in the low 20s right now.
That thing is really struggling here.
We'll keep our eyes on this one, see how it develops for Ethan Stanley. As he goes a lap down, here comes Tyler Fode. Fode puts Stanley a lap down. That will have some implications for Ethan Stanley, as we're going to come around to 4 laps to go here at the Iowa Speedway. Corn on the deck here very shortly for Tyler Fode, if he's able to continue his way out there towards victory lane. We may have a battle coming here shortly for second, Chris. It's about 0.7 of a second between Tommy Ryan and Chase Cabry. It'll all depend on how quickly Chase Cabry can get by Ethan Stanley and Jesse Racimus to work his way up towards that Tommy Ryan car, but very possibly a battle coming for second at this point. But at this rate, if we do stay green, which it does look like we will, your top 3 will include Fode, Ryan, and Cabry in some order.
Yeah, we're down to just the final couple laps here.
Popsicle sticks in the air, 2 to go.
What a race tonight. It's flown by, man.
Absolutely. We've only been at this race for just over 1 hour time, and it's been a 150 lap race. If we face the white flag this time, that means we are going to go green to checkered here tonight at the Iowa Speedway. Get the white flag, get the corn ready. 1 to go for the JD Designs number 40 of Tyler Fode. Tommy Ryan currently holding on to second, trying to stay ahead of Chase Cabry. I don't think Cabry's going to have enough time to get up there, though, as we'll work our way down the back straightaway into turn number 3 for the final time here tonight. Working his way through 3 off of turn number 4. This time, it's going to be a playoff victory for Tyler Fode, punching his ticket to round number 2. Tommy Ryan comes home second. Chase Cabry in third. Tate Lytle in that 4th spot ahead of David Tooker. Ethan Burrell in 6th. Chad Frankenfield 7th. Leighton Norgard with a great run in 8th. What happened to Seth Rawls as Gerald Campbell finishes 9th, and Jake Hunter in 10th. I'm going to back this up on Seth Rawls because something just happened to him there. I don't know if that was frustration out of his camp.
I know we can't look at the finish for 12, but they had an incredible photo finish coming.
Oh, we absolutely can. Okay, Seth just lost it by himself. That's fine.
That doesn't look like a loss. I think Seth's pretty frustrated.
All right, let's watch this battle here. Nick Massey, hey, he was able to work his way closer to the top 10. Very surprising. I didn't honestly expect much out of the Patagonia 48. Just didn't seem like the driver had much here tonight.
Yeah, you're going to see right here off of 4, he runs the top. Jeff didn't run the top, and then he tries to slide up in front of Nick, maybe to force Nick to lift, and Nick just turned left and said, let's drag race this to the line. This could be huge for the playoffs. That's 1 more point for Nick. And a point he got for leading as well there in the middle.
Yeah, great battle. Great battle as Tyler Fode going to do what he normally does and burn it down on the front. Oh, he's going to do a Polish victory lap.
Maybe Chase Elliott's his favorite driver.
We're going to have to ask him about this one, Chris, because maybe this is for Josh Robin or Frank Fode. We're going to step away. We'll be right back. You know? We'll be right back with podium interviews.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
The NASCAR Cup Series returns to Worldwide Technology Raceway on June 1st and 2nd, 2024. The time to get your tickets is now. For only $10 down, you can lock in your seats for an incredible weekend of family fun, featuring the Enjoy Illinois 300 and the Confluence Music Festival. Racing, music, camping, it all adds up to one amazing party. Go to www.raceway.com for the hottest ticket of the year.
And we are back here at Iowa, just wrapping up the MPEC Napa Auto Parts 150 after a green to checkered race here tonight, Chris, right? I'm going to go ahead and bring in our third place finisher, Chase Cabry, who's going to be standing by with Christopher, right?
Yeah, I'm standing here with Chase. Chase, take us through your race there, caution free. I'm not sure if you expected that and coming into tonight, especially at a place like Iowa. So talk to us about your race and ultimately when you decided to pit. That seems to be what helped decide the outcome tonight.
Yeah, I've always felt like at Iowa, I feel like I know how to go fast, but I don't know how to go fast and conserve tires. So, to start the race, I looked at how many laps of fuel we had, and Iowa's typically a place that gets pretty, goes caution free, or you get one or two cautions here and there. So I knew I had to save tire just because, like I said, I don't know how to go fast and save tire at this place for whatever reason. I can't figure it out. So I had to save and then, that first round I kind of equaled out and I was probably only 8, 9 tenths back when we came to pit road and was running similar lap times to Fody. And then we came off pit road and man, he took off and I thought to myself, there's no way I can go that fast and still have a tire left in 20 laps. So I decided to save to continue to just run a pace that I knew was still somewhat decent, but could keep the tire on it. And then it started to transfer back, and I started to catch a little bit towards the end of the run there. But yeah, it's just Iowa's never been a great place for me. So to come out of it third, I guess that's all right, and we'll go into next week.
Yeah, and like you said, you're a playoff car, so you got a solid run in tonight, not really depending on Dega for anything crazy. So what's the outlook on the rest of the playoffs, and what are you hoping to accomplish next week at Talladega?
Yeah, I didn't know that's where we're going. So, Talladega, well, the last super speedway we went to, I made a mistake and built some enemies. So hopefully I don't do that. And yeah, just keep your nose clean. It's one of the biggest things at those places. I feel like if I can just finish, it'll. I don't know how the points within this league work if they carry over and things like that. So yeah, I just have to kind of look at the rules to figure out what it's going to take to if the points carry, well then you got to go do really good, and if they don't, then I feel like I'm in a position to where I can just go run and have fun and I think I'll go on to the next round no matter what.
Well, all right, Chase. Before we let you jump out of here and prepare for Dega and looking ahead to the next round in the playoffs, are there any sponsors you want to thank? Shout out you want to give?
Just the speed factor, guys. Unfortunately, we've all been super busy lately, so we haven't been able to run. I've missed 2 truck races, and but nonetheless, we'll get the gang back together soon. And just all you guys for putting the races on, and Chad and everybody. I've been having a lot of fun.
All right, Chase. Congrats on the run. We look forward to seeing you next week at Talladega and a crazy race next week. We expect that's where all the craziness went instead of Iowa. So we'll see you then.
I will see you.
All right, I have now caught up with Tommy Ryan. Tommy, take us through your night. We saw you pit on the front side of the pit cycle there, and you're the only car that really held on. Ethan Stanley kind of dropped back. I think you passed him again there as a lapper before the end of the thing. So, how hard was it to manage having the lead and to save tire enough to not fall off like that 92 machine did?
I was just trying to split the race in half. I was hoping it would go green, which it did. And I thought it was going to be the best for tire wear. But then when I came out of the pit, I was in a hornet's nest of lap stuff in front of me. And then just kind of picked my way through. And obviously, Fody just, got on and off pit road and through traffic. And then he just came up there. And then I got pinned behind a lap car and he was gone. So I didn't get a chance to really fight him but for about a lap or so. But I honestly, I told Fody the same thing, man. I'm just happy to finally put a race together here. I've been junked myself a couple times and definitely got junked by others. So tonight is pretty much what I'm capable of every week. Just finally got a monkey off my back and got a top 3. So happy about that.
Yeah, not being a playoff guy, how are you looking to manage these playoffs and go out here and just do some trophy hunting like AJ Allmendinger used to do in the Cup Series? What's the outlook for the rest of the playoffs? You gonna be able to make all the races, and how many trophies you plan on stealing?
I plan on racing every week unless life happens. But yeah, I'm just going to go out here and just run and have fun, just like I started out in Daytona, and just try to put together the best finish I can. It's a stout field. There's a lot of talent out here, and it's fun until you get junked. But I had a blast tonight. Led a lot of laps and brought it home in the top 5. So I cannot complain.
Well, all right, Tommy, before we let you jump out of here and celebrate your podium and look ahead to Talladega, are there any sponsors you want to thank, shout out you want to give?
Yeah, thanks to Northern Tool and Equipment and Elite Racing. It's a great league. It's very competitive. Enjoy running here.
Well, all right, Tommy, congrats on the run. We look forward to seeing you through the rest of these playoffs, trying to shake up this field and raining on those playoff drivers' parades. So good luck the rest of the season.
Appreciate it, man.
All right, we are now joined by race winner Tyler Foley. Tyler, I talked to you before the race. You didn't seem too enthused about winning the thing tonight. As a matter of fact, you gave me Scott Crump as a guy to watch tonight, and Crump obviously had his trouble, and he wasn't running very well before he had his trouble. So take us through your night, and did you think that you were going to be able to drive back to the lead when you stayed out as long as you did?
Yeah, well, first I didn't even expect to be here, with how we were looking in practice and the numbers I was getting from some teammates on their tires and stuff like that. So um, didn't have the highest hopes there, and then qualified front row with Ethan. Um, and Ethan just started walking away pretty much from the start there, and I was pretty happy to just ride in third. Um, and then we weren't getting the yellow, and it turned into kind of a tire saving race. And the car was pretty tight, the balance, which is what I prefer. So it kind of played into my hands a little bit. And Ethan started fading there, and Tommy, the whole night, it felt like we were dead even. There was no way we were going to pass each other on equal tires. So I was just kind of stuck riding with him. And I was a little surprised that he pit when he did, seeing how big the tires were falling off, which really helped us out there. But I was honestly worried about Chase the whole time, having some speed at the end. He was closing in on the first run and came into pit with me. And after that, I didn't really see him, so I don't know what happened. exactly with him. But after that, it was just trying to get to Tommy as quick as possible because I was worried we were going to have a late yellow and I wanted to have the lead if that happened. And I was a little worried when I did get to him because we started running equal pace again. I had to kind of use the lap traffic there to get around him, but we'll take it. Super happy. It's been way too late in the season to finally get one here on Monday nights, but better late than never. So,
And it's better in the
we're-
playoffs, right? Here we are in the
Yeah.
playoffs, and you finally got that win and can rest a little easier going into Talladega. So, what's the outlook like for Talladega and then all of it, obviously the rest of the playoffs?
well, now I got to look at the points because I feel like we're not going to be looking too great there with Scott. So we might have to help him out a little bit. I don't know. Don't know how the points are going to shake out here, but first things first, we'll try and help some teammates, and then just manage the points gap, and just try and stay in that top 4 the rest of the playoffs. Hopefully, bring as many teammates in as we can, and see what happens.
Well, all right, before we let you jump out of here and celebrate your victory. Oh, one thing I got to ask you about, we talked about it here. What was with the Polish victory lap? We don't typically see you do that, or it hasn't been shown yet this season. You a Chase Elliott fan, Alan Kowicki fan? What's the deal there?
No, y'all must not have been showing it because I've been doing that all season, really. Yeah, in this series, this would be the first time. The other series
Yeah,
I've been
that's a
doing it.
burn right there. That's a big burn there from the booth.
Yeah. Hey, well, I'll try and be up here more often. I mean, it would be in my best interest. So, but I don't know, just something to do instead of burnouts every time. Got a lot of those, so mixing it up a little bit.
Well, all right, Tyler, before we let you jump out of here and take that trophy back home, any shout outs you want to give, sponsors you want to thank?
Yeah, well, obviously all the teammates there at Lake Norman, we shared a lot of information, and it was looking to go a couple different ways before the green flag there, with setup, and I feel like we hit something pretty good there, and managed the car pretty well. So shout out to all them. I know we didn't have the greatest finish with the rest of the guys, but I'm sure we'll bounce back here. We just got to get through Talladega, and we'll be pretty good. So shout out to them. And shout out to JD Designs, Jonathan Cutlip, for painting all of our stuff. And shout out to you guys here for being up in the booth.
All right, Tyler Fody, congrats on the win, the first of the season, and now good luck the rest of the playoffs and coming and speak to us through the rest of the season.
Yeah, man, appreciate it.
That was your post-race interviews tonight, presented by our friends over at Napa Auto Parts. Thanks to them for their support. Once again, MPEC Napa Auto Parts, a family-owned business celebrating its 95th year in operation with 16 stores in northern Indiana and southwest Michigan. We appreciate them. We, of course, appreciate Blue Egg Marketing, Worldwide Technology Raceway, and Rebilas Photography. Chris, what a great race we had tonight. Green to checkered, my friend.
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised that we got that green to checker with how hard it was to pass. We saw how hard it was to pass. Even with Fody on fresher tires, that race-winning pass still took laps to happen, and it still took a lap car getting involved. So track position was the talk of the town unless you burn your stuff up, and we did see some of those guys and saw the race really shake up there in that last 25 laps. Now we get to prepare for Talladega. The end of the first round, it's going to be really exciting. Some guys have to win. Some guys are going to be trying to keep other guys from winning. It's going to be a crazy, crazy race from a playoff standpoint, and there's no guarantees that a playoff guy wins next week. So we never know what we might get when we go to Talladega, but it's going to be exciting. So I guess make sure you tune in, and thanks to Napa for sponsoring the race tonight.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal race here. Like I said, great to see Tyler Fody work his way back to victory lane for the first time this season. Didn't think it would happen again for him. Thought he was headed for retirement, but a victory for the 40 nonetheless. Ahead of Tommy Ryan, who had a great day here today, led the most laps, leading 10 more than Tyler Fody with 60 on the day. So congratulations to him on a solid run. Chase Cabry as well, and of course the rest of the field. Chris, we were able to finish with 30 of the 31 drivers running at the end of this. And of course, we had 15 on the lead lap. So a great job of the entire field. Congratulations to them. Thanks to Chad Frankenfield, Dave Huckleberry, everyone behind the scenes here at the Elite Racing League and the Elite Racing Network. And of course, thanks to you at home for tuning in here tonight. We couldn't do this without you. Have yourselves a good night, everybody. We'll see you Wednesday night for Cup Series action on the Elite Racing Network. Don't go anywhere. Or do go anywhere because we're done for the night, but come back on Wednesday. We'll see you then.